Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Demon Lamb podcast. My name is Andy, and joining me again this week, Grapeviney. Good evening, Grapeviney. How are you?
I'm excellent, Andy. Thank you.
Despite the D's having a bye, it's been a big week at Demonland with the announcement of a new CEO in Gary Pert to replace the retiring Peter Jackson in October. And also with the announcement that the D's will be seeking a new home, a new training base and a new admin facility in the heart of the MCG precinct. And we'll be talking about all that and more later tonight. Shortly, we're going to be joined by former Melbourne Football Club captain Brad Green, and I'm really looking forward to that. How about you?
Yeah, for sure. Greenie had a great career. Started off probably with the highest of highs and finished a bit lower, given where we were when he eventually bowed out. But he was a great player over a long time, wasn't he?
Yeah, really loved everything that he did for the club. He was really exciting when he came in, and great player for the club. I think he sits 7th on the highest games list, for the club, and that's got to be respected.
Also a skipper, so
yeah, exactly.
That has its own gloss to it.
It definitely does. But before we go, we're going to just chat for a little bit before we get Brad on the phone. New CEO, Gary Pert, that must have come as a surprise to you. I certainly wasn't. I don't know. For me, I wasn't expecting a big name to sort of come in. I think my money was on. I thought they'd go, in-house. I thought. It might have been Josh Marnie, but yeah, well, was pleasantly surprised, and I'm quite happy to go with someone who's got I don't know if the word a bit of gravitas behind him or the experience, but I think maybe that's what we need. Your thoughts?
Well, there's no doubt that Pert's got that in the same way that Peter Jackson does. They're both long-standing administrators.
Yep.
In the caper, so Pert comes with the big club experience that you have at Collingwood. Now we're a bit different to that, so he's going to need to adjust, but he was able to grow their membership base considerably. Whether that was through tricks such as pet memberships and things like that, I don't know, but we'd want to be doing the same. And he also developed facilities at Collingwood, which as you mentioned, and we'll talk about a bit later, we're about to commence ourselves. So it's a good acquisition.
I think that's that experience with, he was there at Collingwood in the Lexus Centre. I think it's the Holden Centre now. And that's definitely going to help us if we're to get a base. Look, we'll talk about our base a bit later on, whether that's going to get through or has any chance of getting through. But we're definitely looking for a new home, and having someone who's had that experience is definitely going to help us. And do you have any concerns with? We don't even know the whole story of how it all happened, but are you concerned at all with the fact that when Peter had announced that he was going to be retiring, that he was going to have a hand in the I don't know if it was going to be a hand in choosing a successor. It sounded that way, I think, but it seems from what we've heard that, and I won't say, it doesn't sound like the board went behind his back, but it sounds like it was a board appointment. And from what I've read, maybe Peter didn't have a hand in it, but I can't see how that could be.
Yeah, it's hard to know. We don't know the process, but I don't think there's really any resentment anywhere. If anything, the strangest thing to me is that he groomed 3 internal candidates to go up against one another. That could be potentially, disharmonious for the workplace, in that if one gets and the other 2 miss, but all 3 have missed in this instance.
I don't think I don't think that's strange in a workplace
No.
environment, though, that people go up against each other for
No,
a
you're right.
role.
You're right. Yep.
I'm sure that happens quite a lot in business. I know I've been up for jobs where other people within the organisation have also gone for it. So it's certainly nothing new. I hope there isn't any bad blood between anyone, and I hope we don't lose any of the talent as a result of this. And I'm not suggesting we will. And
that journo Tom Morris, he was on the couch on Monday night. And he said he'd been talking to people in the club and outside of the club, and there was bad blood and people were going to withdraw money. And then a second later he said, but if I was you, for all the Demon fans out there, don't be worried. It doesn't look like any of this is going to eventuate. And it's like, well, what kind of a story is that? So saying on the one hand that there was all this acrimony behind the scenes and then dismissing it out of hand a moment later. Yeah, I think if there'd been real dissent, we would have known about it by now. There's been these mutterings in the background, barely. So I don't think there is any bad blood there.
Well, look, I think a few journos sort of jumped the gun a bit at the beginning with, I think the story broke, I think, in the Australian, and I think there were a few reporters who had, and the majority of them had no idea, and they I think they were struggling to try and find a story out of it, and were probably just looking at the fact that Peter Jackson had said, he did want a hand in it, and I think they were just trying to find a story where none existed, as a lot of journalists sometimes do.
Well, when you get beaten on a story like that, you have to find a fresh angle to it. No one wants to just rewrite what the competition has broken exclusively, so you've got to add your own little sauce to it, or embellishment. And so, as you say, they're sort of scratching around for a new angle to it.
All right, well, maybe we can revisit that a little bit later on. We're just going to take a short little break now. You'll probably be hearing either our interview with Ruzi or the 2000 qualifying final against the Blues while we get Brad on the phone. But when we come back, we'll have Brad Green. Stay tuned.
Schwartz might go to the square. No, he goes for the pass, and it's good to Green. He's closer to goal this time.
Steve Phoebe's away then, running down towards half forward. They need some marking forwards. Green has been the best of them. And he's marked it again. Well,
He stands with a margin at 15. And now it's reduced. What a kick from the young Brad Green.
Comes out to Bruce. He's over the ball. Green surrounded. Very slick. Mansfield kicks into a teammate this time. It comes back to Green. He snaps and he's fourth. But I think he's got it. Four since half time.
Our guest tonight kicked 350 goals in 254 games with the Demons over 12 seasons, making his debut in early 2000. His career got off to a flying start, and he lived out every boy's dream later that season when he virtually won a final off his own boot against the Blues. He kicked 55 goals during a stellar 2010 year, a season in which he won the Keith Bluey Truscott Trophy as the club's best and fairest. He captained the Demons the following year. I'm talking, of course, about Brad Green. Greenie, welcome to the Demon Land podcast.
Good evening. How you going, guys?
Yeah, we're good, Brad. Brad, it was a career with many highs and a few lows thrown in there too. Let's start with one of the real high points, at least in our eyes as supporters. Well, we just heard now the qualifying final against Carlton in your debut year. The game looked lost at three-quarter time. Take us through that final quarter and describe the emotions your experience as it unfolded.
Yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind. I still remember sort of making my debut in it was round 2 in 2000 against the Kangas on Friday night footy. If you remember round 1, I think we got beaten by Richmond. I think it was round 1 that year. And going throughout the year, you're nervous in keeping your spot. Back then, don't worry about 90 rotations, let alone 20. So I sat on the bench quite a fair bit for Dennis. And it was the same in that Carlton final. I don't remember really playing much of the first half of that game, and coming on in the second half, trying to stem the flow in certainly a big game for the footy club. And it was a bit surreal in the way it's all happened. And you think back on what you sort of did on the day, and you really think, geez, it was a bit of a fluke, really. I couldn't imagine doing it again and trying to do it again, but it was an amazing day. I still remember going into the last quarter, the noise of, so I remember 75 there, and it was certainly louder than grand final day. So, it was fond memories, and certainly something that I cherish, and one of the games that you look back upon over your career and go, you can certainly think back on. It was one of the true games that you had a big impact in.
Cameron Bruce was the other star that day. Your careers obviously took place over the same period, and from that afternoon, at least in supporters' eyes, you were basically intertwined ever since. Were you good mates off the field? And how was it having your careers going through together like that?
Yeah, we were. Well, we are, and we were. We're both in each other's bridal party at each other's weddings. So, yeah, we're great mates and still great mates today. But, getting drafted in the same year as Cam, and socialising, playing golf and sort of coming through at the same time, and playing in the same side and sort of in the same area. We're great mates and still great mates today. So it's even more special when you can cherish those moments with close friends.
Yep. We've asked the same question of Jeff White and Robbo. What were your expectations going into the grand final that year? Did you think we were a realistic chance of knocking off the Bombers, who were almost undefeated?
I've been a brash 18-year-old thinking that, he's made a good AFL footy. I've made a grand final my first year. I thought we could beat King Kong that day. Didn't matter who we were coming up against. I thought we could take the game out. When you're looking, I still remember, I think it was round 11, round 12, when Carlton beat us by 120-odd points that year in 2000, and we didn't lose the game. And when you're looking at going through a season, we were certainly down in certain stages towards the end of the year, and would get back up and win. But certainly the Bombers, when you look back at their side and the names that they had, all superstars in their side, but we were still confident, very confident going into the game. But it was a bit of a kick down when you see the end result. There's no doubt about that. It was a bad loss in the end, but certainly confident going into the day.
Yep.
It was a bit of a dirty day all round. It almost became life-threatening day for you. You copped a nasty whack in the throat in the first quarter. Is it true that you couldn't breathe because of the swelling and you had to be put on oxygen? Yeah.
So what happened? People keep thinking it was basically the Dean Wallace punch in the face that did it, but that didn't actually hurt me. It was the first bounce of the day. Whitey hit the tap. I come off the centre forward and was charging. Dean Wallace picked the ball up and he raised his elbow to sort of fend me, and his elbow went straight into my larynx. And throughout the first quarter, it started swelling and started sort of compressing together. And quarter time, I said to the doc, I can't breathe, and they sent me down to the change rooms and put me on oxygen. And basically, they were ready to do a trachea, so they're ready to punch a hole in the throat to release, and ended up in hospital that night. But it was sort of fine in a couple of days after that. But it wasn't a nice way to sort of end your grand final day only playing a quarter. But it was one of those things that happens in footy.
After making the granny in your first year, did you think that the team was headed for a sustained period of success, considering the other draftees that had come through with you, such as Cam and Matty Whelan and others?
Yeah, I really thought, and we probably, the side that we had was certainly wasn't the most talented side during that sort of 2000 2005 period, but the cohesion and the gel that we had and the mateship that we had for each other was certainly terrific bond, and we we went on a bit of a roller coaster there for a number of years, up and down, and that consistency wasn't good enough, and that probably we got overwhelmed by talent in the end. But for a number of years, we'll sort of hedging top four for most of the year, and then we always lose a couple of crucial games towards the end of the year, which sort of knocked us down a couple of pegs. But I thought we were always confident and never threatened by a lot of sides. But back then there were some amazing teams. You look back at the Essendons and the Brisbanes when they went through their three-peat. Certainly strong sides coming through, and we thought we were good enough at different stages. But certainly in the end, we probably weren't consistent enough.
Brad, it must have been fun playing in that forward line with Nita, Schwartz, the Wiz, Robbo, Bruce, and yourself. There's quite a bit of talent in there.
Yeah, there was. When you're looking at playing against the Wiz, you don't know what he was going to do every game he played, but what exceptional talent. It was amazing playing alongside him. Robbo, you didn't know if Robbo was going to sit on your head or knee in the back, and same with Nita. I played a lot of footy with Nita and next to him, and playing with those, and even Schwarter, Cam Bruce. It was certainly a multi-talented forward line that we looked to challenge our opponents. But great fun. We had great fun playing that down there, and they were certainly talented.
You played a lot of footy in the midfield as well as spending a lot of time up forward. Everyone loves kicking a goal, of course. What was your preference if you had one?
I used to, basically I reckoned through the period of about 06 to certainly 2011, I reckon I was basically 50-50 of going sort of midfield, wing, forward, and I loved the flexibility that we had during that, and I certainly enjoy getting up the ground because it can be a bit of a groundhog day in the forward line. Tough conditions, not getting a kick, getting up around the ball, trying to work it that way, getting back in defence, taking marks, and doing what you can, getting around stoppages. So I preferred sort of the 50-50 split of both playing sort of midfield and forward, which was good.
Brad, you had a pretty good conversion rate, you in front of goal. Is that something you'd always been part of your game, or did you have to work on that to become a sharpshooter?
It was something I certainly always worked on. I would, have 100 shots a week at training. Even on my day off, I'd go down to my local ground and still practice kicking. So it was something you certainly had to work on, but it's certainly something that hasn't changed in modern footy. You get frustrated why they can't kick straight and different things, and there's all different circumstances why they can't. But I believe it was always it's a massive mind thing. Goal kicking, it's a fair bit mental. Yeah, you got to have good technique and the ability to kick fairly well. But if you can get the mind right, and I was always confident, no matter where I was inside 50, that I could kick it. And that was half the battle, I thought.
Yeah. Another feature of your game, especially playing up forward in later seasons, saw you risking life and limb by backing into packs or holding your ground as a defender came flying at you from behind. During those moments, do you ever think to yourself, I'm in trouble here, this is going to hurt?
No, I used to always think the moment I think that is when I probably did get hurt.
Right.
The moments where you think that you're just going to go for this ball, it would end up that you'll find the majority of the time. And deep down, you always wanted to do that and be seen to be setting the scene and doing the tough things when they needed to be done, and certainly that was one feature of my game that I pride myself to be able to go back with a slide of the ball and take a strong contested mark. So you don't want to let people down by not doing that, and I always had that in the back of my mind that if I was going to go, I was fully committed to going.
Yep.
You were given the captaincy in 2011 after James McDonald retired, and you've described being named captain as a surreal experience. What did you mean by that? And looking back, what did it mean for you to lead the oldest footy club in the world?
Yeah, it was certainly a great honour. I think surreal meaning for me is, you never go into any footy club thinking that one day you're going to captain. You know, you go through early stages in your career and you want to get picked, and then you want to, stay in the side. And captaincy was certainly wasn't a big aspiration of mine. And then you eventually get into the leadership group, you start setting the scene, and you're working your way up, and then all of a sudden the captaincy sort of, I was an elder statesman with a young side, and basically I didn't try to change who I was. A lot of it was leading by example, but trying to teach the young guys, the standards of training, being trying to create a great culture that would sustain for a long period of time. And that's all I meant by that, because it shouldn't change the person that you are. It just means you've got to do a few more things.
Greenie, after playing finals regularly in the early part of your career, dark days came to the club after Neil Danaher finished up. How hard was it during those times, especially, in your final season when virtually all hope had sort of been extinguished?
Yeah, there's certainly some trying moments. The club was going through different stages where, I was coming towards the end and we were trying to win as many games as possible, and we butted heads a little bit during all that trying period. And yeah, it was certainly, I think, supporters felt it, players felt it, admin people felt it. We all felt it, that it was wasn't a great period in our career. But I felt, when Dean came in at the start of 08, 08 to when he did, I thought...
07, I think, yeah.
07 was his first year.
Yep.
I thought Bales was certainly, after Neil, I thought Bales was a terrific coach. I thought seriously that he was ahead of the game in the way he taught us offense. People thought that he didn't teach us defense, but he wanted to create a brand of footy that would bring supporters to the game, to be an exciting side. And when we had players like Liam Jarrah and Austin Wanamiri and Aaron Davey, I still remember the game. And if you remember that, incident by 80-odd points. And it was certainly a really young side, and we were playing terrific footy. And, to see him get sacked was certainly hard to deal with. So through that period, I thought we were building something. And I reckon that was one of the worst decisions the club could have ever made, was getting rid of Dean Bailey. There's no doubt in my mind that he was the right man to take the club, to its next premiership. And in the end, it's sort of, unfortunately, he's still not here with us. But it was certainly a poor decision by the club getting rid of him. There's no doubt about that. And yeah, it was dark days, my last year of footy under Mark Neeld wasn't great, and it was probably the right circumstances that I had to sort of step away really and let the club sort of go in a new direction, a new future really. That's sort of how it panned out, and sort of you would love to be Shane Crawford in 08 and walk away with a flag, but it wasn't my time, and it was something that you can say that it was the right time to step away and let someone else take over and sort of take it in a new direction.
Brad, was it a kick in the guts when Mark Neeld came in and replaced you as captain, or is that just one you have to cop on the chin and move on?
No, it wasn't a kick in the guts. I questioned why we were putting a couple of young kids into a position of certainly those roles. I asked the process on how they did it. I questioned that. But it was certainly, there was no disappointment. I was full support behind Grimesy and Watsy. There's no doubt I was right behind them. It was just, to put that much pressure on a couple of young kids when they're only starting their careers, and thinking that it was the right decision. In hindsight's a funny thing, but at the time it was certainly, I wouldn't have made that decision doing it that way. It certainly was. I asked a couple of questions why it was going down that path. And then that's just me being a senior player on what direction they were trying to take. and that's the direction they wanted to take. We started doing it with youth, and that's what they saw the direction forward that way.
Well, Paul Roos agrees with you. We interviewed him last week, and he labelled that decision as being ludicrous. So you're in pretty good company there.
Yeah. When you're talking of positions of not power, but when you're trying to create cultures and create good clubs, good strong clubs don't make decisions on a whim, and I just felt for them more than anything. It had nothing to do with me. I was still a player, I was still a senior player to get out there and lead. It was just more I was trying to support them when they didn't really, they didn't really know their own game. They had to cement their own spots, their own form, get that into order before you give positions of power like that. And, I still reckon it hurt their careers, no doubt.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be the Lone Ranger there. You mentioned Dean Bailey a moment ago. How close were you with him, I suppose, off-field, away from footy, and how hard was his passing 4 years ago?
Yeah, we're very close. The communication that you've got to have between a captain and a coach is quite high on most clubs, on the communication that, the coach doesn't know everything that's happening in the playing group, and the captain and the leadership group do. There's always questions to be asked, seeing how we're going. He certainly asks us, how do we play on the weekend? Can we change training? How are the boys feeling? Are we tired? And I think that's an ongoing conversation, and great cultures that coach and player relationship and captain relationship and leadership relationship needs to happen. And good clubs do it. And Dean was certainly one of those guys. And he was a bit of a guy that you could turn around to and have a conversation, always constantly asking how my family was and vice versa. So, we did have a great relationship. And sad, the passing of him, and you just feel deeply sorrow for Karen and the boys that he's got. So, it was a tough time, and it was certainly a coach that should never have lost his job.
Brad, I won't ask the obvious question that everyone always asks you, so I'll phrase it this way: are you sick of every interview you've ever had asking you about your training with Manchester United?
It's certainly one of the questions that I get asked probably 100% of the time. And being the World Cup that's on at the moment, keeping an eye on that. But it was a part of my life that happened, and one that I'll cherish, and something that I did. And it was a part of my life that was a terrific opportunity, and it was great.
These things have a habit of taking on a life of their own, and I think in some circles people probably said that you were just not far off, kicking a winner in a Champions League final. You were that good. You're also a pretty talented junior cricketer and basketballer. How close were you to committing yourself to a sport other than footy?
Yeah, it was basically draft day, 99. November 99, I came over to Melbourne for the draft, and I basically, the week leading into the draft, I had a cricket contract to go to the Adelaide Cricket Academy and work under Rod Marsh. So basically what was going to happen, I was going to get drafted, and that was my number one priority, and if it didn't happen in 99, I was going next day, jump on a plane to Adelaide and go to the Cricket Academy. So it's amazing sort of how it all pans out. If I sort of had it in my mind, if one decision didn't go my way, I had another already to go. So I loved my cricket. I was a batter and left-hander. I don't regret. AFL was certainly the game that I loved playing, and still wish I could.
After your playing career, you were an assistant coach at both Carlton and North. Did you enjoy your time as a coach, and is that something you may continue to pursue in the future?
Yeah, I loved it. It was I think the closest thing you get to playing is coaching. You still feel a part of a team culture, team aspect, but there's nothing like running out on game day as a player. But the ability on game day and feeling that you get when you win and lose is still the same feeling.
Yeah.
On when you're sitting in the coach's box, you just can't have a physical influence on the game. We coaches still have massive influences on game, and probably too much. Now I'm out of the coaching, I can say that. They have too much influence on the game and the way they structure up, rather than let players play a little bit. But it's something that I stepped away at the end of last year, and in the back of my mind, I never wanted to be a senior coach. I had 5 years being an assistant coach at two great clubs, working under Mick at Carlton and then Brad Scott at North. Was something that I'll cherish, because I love the opportunity working at different clubs and seeing how they operate, seeing how players go about their business, and trying to teach players was very rewarding, and see that happen on game day. So down the track, I certainly don't see myself being an AFL senior coach. Would I get back into coaching at some point in life? Yeah, maybe, because I've got a passion for the AFL game, and that might be local or it might be back in AFL land, but I won't be going anywhere. I still love the game, and I'm enjoying taking my two boys and sitting in the outer and having a beer and a pie, cheering on the D's this year. It's been great fun.
I noticed that you played most of your career as a forward and a midfielder, but I noticed at North you were the defensive coach. How does that come? I've seen a few assistant coaches who didn't play in a certain position sort of take the opposite line as a coach. How does that come about?
Yeah, it was certainly an opportunity that Brad said, we want you to coach the back line, and I think modern day coaching is a bit like man managing structures and game plans and a process, rather than teaching them I don't need to teach Robbie Tarrant and Scott Thompson and Michael Ferrito how to defend one-on-one, because they're pretty good. Yeah. So, with those guys I'm working, I had a pretty core senior guys down there. You're looking at Damien McMillan and Luke McDonald, Sam Wright. So I had a pretty core group of talented players that knew how to play defence. It was teaching them more to how to play in our structure and the way we wanted to play, and working with them as people, trying to get the best out of them and communicating them that way. I think coaching is all about sort of teaching and helping them and having empathy about the player themselves, and that's being them out there and trying to get the best out of them. So rather than teaching Robbie Tarrant, who probably should be an All-Australian defender, how to one-on-one, very rarely would I say, "What are you doing there, Robbie? What technique did you have?" Because I got no idea how to defend. He would teach me. So, yeah, it's certainly more about the process, the structure, and our style and team defence is a very big part of the defensive systems and coaches' role that they need to do. So it's a bigger picture rather than an individual style on how do you go about it.
Greenie, we've got one final question for you, and we are very grateful for your time. There's been a lot of discussion about the future of footy in Tasmania and the health of the state league there. What do you think needs to happen to reinvigorate the game? Does there need to be a standalone team, a standalone Tasmanian team in the AFL?
Yeah, I've been pretty passionate when I saw what was sort of happening over the last couple of years, that, the state wasn't producing any talented juniors and getting drafted, that something needs to happen. And speaking to a lot of Tasmanians, and I'm down there a fair bit still because I've got family and friends and go and watch a lot of local footy, that things need to change. And it's a good thing that it's come to head. It's probably been too long, and the AFL just thought that we'll keep sort of coasting along. But we're not doing enough down there in AFL funding, and the AFL actually putting and investing some time into it. They haven't been good enough. But I think the biggest call that they need to do is get back into it and have a Tassie Mariners team, which I came through, a team that's playing in the TAC Cup in under-18 system. Look at their full development programs down there. They're under-18s through to under-10s, working on their coaching and structures and the way that their talent pathways is the biggest area I see that they need to change as first point of call. Statewide footy has certainly been down in the standard that the guys are playing is not great standard, but I still think it's viable if they work hard and invest. Getting their own AFL team, I haven't been on the team of they definitely need one. I think over time they deserve one. There's no doubt they deserve one, but can I see it working? Yeah, it probably work better than Gold Coast and GWS, but it's never going to happen with the investment of TV rights and the power of the regions that Gold Coast and GWS are in. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to money and TV rights and all that. Do I think they deserve it? Yeah, they do. An AFL team in Tassie sounds right to me, but can I think it will happen? I don't ever think it will happen in the next little bit, but over time I reckon they should have a team.
Greenie, before I let you go, you mentioned you got two boys. How far off are they from donning the boots for the Ds?
Yeah, Oliver's 8 and my youngest boy Wilbur's 5, so both passionate Melbourne boys. Ollie even cried last Queen's birthday, which I did too.
So did I.
In the loss. But yeah, he's passionate, D's man, which is great. Just seeing your boy so emotionally invested in a team. He loves the boys. I think his favourite players are Jesse Hogan and Jonesy, and still trying to tell him that Dad actually played with Jonesy. Still can't get that through to him, but he loves it. It's a great thing to see a boy be passionate about a club that he played for. So yeah, he's 8 and he loves his footy, so which is all good.
Great. Well,
good stuff.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Brad. We really appreciate it, and go D's, and thank you very much.
No worries, guys. Thank you.
All right, cheers. Well, that was Brad Green, former Melbourne captain and champion of the club, and thank you to Brad for that time that he's given us. That was a great interview. Yeah, good insight. To his career, and it's sort of disappointing that from all of us as supporters, sort of the end of the career and the state the team was in at the time, and He's
had a few interesting things to say about that time, didn't he?
Yeah, and you know what?
That Bales should never have been sacked. And also just that comment about Bales being very consultative on things like training, which he wasn't viewed too sort of favourably, on the boards in terms of players cancelling their own sessions and cancelling certain sessions and things like that. So... interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And, his end of career was in that real dark period. And it's best that we forget that and move on to, bigger and better things, which hopefully we're starting to, and I think we have come out of that, but still a long way to go.
Yep.
All right, so we'll moving right along. If you would like to join us on the show tonight, you can give us a call, 0390163666, or you can Skype us, Demonland31. We'll take your call. So... we mentioned the new CEO, but we also briefly mentioned the new training facility story that came out this week. Do you think there's any chance that we could possibly get that parcel of land on the footsteps of the MCG, basically?
Potentially. There won't be easy because there'll definitely be opposition to it from various quarters. Any project like that has got local, mainly local interests that are sort of protecting it on various fronts, environmental and aesthetics and parkland and heritage and trees and things like that. So there'll be all sorts of opposition to it, you can guarantee that. But you'd hope that the club is sort of, wise enough that it hasn't come out full bore without getting some sort of indication that it's a possible, it's a possibility of getting through. So I suppose we've got to wait and see.
So the plan is they want to, from what came out the other day, they want to put a training oval on that bit of land. If anyone, I think it's the area, if anyone went to the Family Day this year, it's on that bit of land, which is quite a sloping land, so they obviously have to do a bit of works there to sort of flatten it out. And then they want to build a club headquarters behind that over the, I think it's a tram line there. That's...
No, it's train.
Is that train? Oh, yeah, there is the train, but there's
the Jollymont train.
Yeah, that's right.
But then there's a tram
behind that, yes.
That goes behind there.
They want to put it over the thing, and I think it's going to be a multi-purpose type of thing with perhaps residential apartments. I'm sure they'll have some shops or something, and offices, obviously, and gym and all the football facilities.
Do you think Deanland will be moving its headquarters there?
Yeah, well, I list on the website. I've listed Brunton Avenue as our address. So yes,
there you go. So stay tuned for more details, folks.
Yeah, Look, I hope that we can get some type of facility in that MCG area.
It'd be a dream, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but it seems like that's what the board and what the admin sort of is gunning hard to do at the moment. And Peter Jackson, if he can pull this off, or even Purdy after that, that would be a coup for sure.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of ways to dress these things up as assets to the community, and you can open up certain parts of the facility to the public when the club's not using them. So, and you can have, all kinds of things based out of there. Richmond have got an Indigenous, an Indigenous program running out of theirs. I think even Nev might be involved with the program running out of there. But so there's all sorts of ways to sort of present this and develop it and cook it up in a way that satisfies the needs of the various parties that are going to have to sign off on it along the way.
Well, let's hope we can get that done. Would definitely be exciting. I did write in the thread that
I understand the people that want to protect the aesthetics of the park. I think it's great. One of the real features of the G is that it is surrounded by, largely very nice parkland.
Yeah.
You go to similar sized stadiums around the world, and they're concrete jungles. And so that's one of the really nice things about the G is when you're walking to the ground, you're walking through parkland. So from what I've read on the thread, the plan it actually would involve very minimal disruption to sort of that kind of aesthetic. So that'd be great too.
Well, I know that
preserved.
I know just in my own business stuff that I've been involved in over the years, whenever you're developing a site, the trees and how many trees you have to knock down is always a big concern for councils and obviously interest groups, environmental groups. But look, the bit of land that they're looking at is fairly just, there's trees surrounding it, but it seems like there'd be minimal impact to that. And there are sort of ways around that in replanting and stuff like that. So it would be really nice to have a venue close to our home. And I think that's what we've lacked over the last 50 years is having a home. The G.
Super Mikado had a good suggestion too, that they need to build in social club facilities that overlook the train line and like a balcony where we can taunt opposition supporters as they leave the ground. So I like that idea too.
Does the whole social club culture even exist anymore, like it did in the 80s? And
it doesn't, but I think if you did have a facility that is literally at the ground in the car park, I think it would work. Well, I think there's enough people that would definitely go to the club's venue after the game, after a win, for sure.
What do Richmond do? I remember they used to have a nightclub, I think, in that Punt Road thing. But do they do that now? Not the nightclub aspect of it, but
I think St Kilda used to run the most famous nightclub back in the 80s out at Moorabbin. So,
and look at how they performed during that time.
I don't know what the bar situation is at Punt Road Oval. I mean, there is obviously one there.
But do supporters go back there after a game? I
noticed that. Have you ever noticed that sometimes their shop is open?
Yeah, it is open on their game
during
days.
Our games when Richmond aren't playing.
Oh, really?
Like we'll be playing Hawthorn, and their shop's open for some reason. It always looks busy.
No, I've noticed. I noticed the other week when we were leaving the ground. I noticed there was a game on the Richmond Reserves game. So maybe when their Rezzies play, possibility. I noticed there's a quite a nice hot dog stand. If you're coming off the train from the Richmond station, walking up to the G, they got someone's opened up a hot dog stand in front of it.
You can get a buggy up to the ground now as well.
But I feel a bit bad. It seems like that's there for people who can't walk. I think I'd be very lazy if I decided to take one of those up to the ground. In considering I'm quite mobile myself, so but I think that's a good, a nice service.
Yep.
All right, so that's the plans for the training facility, admin facility. Hope we get something or something similar in the area. And another piece of news that dropped, and I haven't heard anything official about this yet, but it's just sort of rumours circulating, only on Demonland, because I haven't seen it anywhere else at the moment, but that's about the possibility of the Darwin game being dumped from our Northern Territory package.
That is more than rumours circulating, my friend. Okay. That is absolutely rolled gold, solid information.
So finally, Demonland broke a story after 18 years in the business. So, what do you know about it?
Ethan would take offence with that, being the big trade breaker online. So I'd be careful what you say there.
Okay. Has he broken anything official? I know he's in the chat room.
No. This is more in jest than in anything else. Although he'd probably reject that as well. But you obviously haven't been paying sort of close attention to the way he promotes himself as a big trade breaker.
All right. Yes. I don't notice everything that goes on the site. But
you need to get more immersed in the community.
Well, I do, but there's a lot of moving parts to this site. I have to keep it up and running. We haven't had any since we've moved to the new server. Things are running smoothly, and there's no problems there. But I'm always tinkering with stuff, with the look and feel of the site. You probably notice changes all the time, new little things added. But that's sort of an ongoing process. But anyway, so. The story
he did, just to give you an idea of the type of news that he breaks, he did post in someone's in one thread about someone's contract status that they were prepared to sign a contract and keep playing football. So he breaks news of that sort of variety, if you like. Stop the presses kind of stuff.
So the back to the Darwin thing. If we're finished with Ethan, so
yes.
The story is that the club has no issues with the Alice component, and we're very happy with the Heart of the Nations thing, which was great because Channel 7 went full bore with that, which was great, and it was good for the club. But the humidity of the Darwin match and the flow-on effects from the following week is as was broken in this story, is too high a price to pay. And I'm not sure if when Super Mikado and I were interviewing Ruzi, I think Super Mikado tried to get from Ruzi which he would prefer. I think Super Mikado wanted Ruzi to say ditch the Darwin thing. He didn't say that. He sort of didn't give a one way or the other which one you would get rid of. But I would think if I'm looking at it, you want to get rid of that, the humidity of Darwin. I think that's the way we should be going.
The Alice game, the club sees as a game like no other. The conditions are very similar to what we'd play in at the start of the season at the G, when it's still quite pleasant, and you can have a very sunny day for football. I think it was a little bit hot this year for the Darwin game, but that was an unusual day. And I think the club has their routine now for Alice set in place, and they're very comfortable in that routine. Not saying they don't have a routine for Darwin, but obviously the humidity makes it a completely different game to the one in Alice. And there's also the travel factor. I actually travelled to Darwin a fair bit, and it's a bit like travelling overseas. You got to go via Cairns. Often you've got to go via Cairns and then on to Darwin, but even direct, it feels sometimes like a bit of an international flight. So I understand, well, we all understand where the club's coming from, and most supporters have been urging the club to ditch the whole NT deal for years now.
Yeah, look, I understand the financial aspect of it. I understand the community aspect of it for Alice Springs, but it does, it's effectively giving up 2 home games against interstate clubs, which could be seen as 2 wins. If you
Well, let's see, the AFL is now prepared to give us the bye after the Darwin game, but that means that the Darwin game has to be played in these middle rounds, which upsets the concept of the Alice Springs game, which is the heart of the nation game during the Doug Nicholls Indigenous round. So
can you not
there's still a bit of wheeling and dealing to go back and forward, but we're at the point where the AFL is prepared to offer up that concession.
Is it a case of we have to play both or none, or can you do that? I mean, Heart of the Nation, obviously doing it in Darwin, it's not really hard. Is that not considered Heart of the Nation if you do it up in Darwin?
Well, no,
is that too?
No, it's not geographically, and it's not in that spiritual sense that they're looking for.
Yeah.
You can't. It doesn't work anywhere else, that concept.
Do you think, I don't know if this is just outside the box, if you have to keep 2, would you even consider spending 2 weeks in the NT and playing one game after the other?
Ooh.
Or is that too much of a...
Well, then you've got the issue of where's the club training while it's away, and you don't have the... not forgetting the ground, but you don't have the other facilities and resources that you do when you're at your home base. So I think that'd be the issue, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To stay on the road for 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, for me, if financials weren't an issue, and we're getting to I don't know if we even are getting to the point, because considering we're ditching the pokies, if we do have to build a facility, obviously we'd get a bit of government assistance with that. I would hope so, if we can come to some deal with that. But money could still be a bit of an issue.
Yep, it's unresolved for the moment.
It is. But I have no problem with ditching one of them, and if we have to choose, then Darwin's the one to go, even if we do get the bye after it. I just want to see my team play footy live, so I would love to have those 2 games.
Someone else suggested you could play 2 games in Alice, but then by having such a focus on the Heart of the Nation one, you're then relegating the second one to sort of, a secondary slot, and that plays it down, before you even sort of begin.
Well, look, from just reading stuff online, I posted that story onto Facebook and to Twitter, and most people are in favour of dumping the Darwin game. So if the people are speaking, they've spoken, and I think the Darwin one, from a supporter's perspective, if we have to have one, Heart of the Nation probably wins out. All right,
Yep.
so moving on, Ollie Wines is off the market. Not that I ever thought there was no way we would be able to, if he was shopping himself around, which apparently he hadn't even looked, according to his management, hadn't even looked at any other offers. But there was, we said this a few weeks ago, there was nothing I don't think we could offer in terms of trade or draft picks. So
we don't really need him. Look, he's a great player.
We could
no doubt about that. But
forget the fact that we could have had him already.
I'm just so sick of, you'll have Pickett fence ringing in a minute because you can't say Ollie Wines without him having a Jimmy Toumpas fit. So we need to reopen. The Ollie Wines Lounge, which was set up a few years ago, where people can go and can go and vent, basically. So, yeah.
Well, I think
someone needs to bump that thread.
Well, when this story broke that he had re-signed, I think we can close this thread for 4 years now because,
the threads will keep on coming.
And speaking of Ollie Wines, he did the famous thing that every club does to us these days, and some other clubs do it to each other. He's come out today and said Melbourne have the best midfield in the competition, and they want to take that mantle off us. But I love how opposition players, coaches, they love to talk us up before they play us.
I actually saw that interview because he was on 360. So they just interviewed him, and it's funny what becomes a headline. I mean, that was just him answering the typically inane questions that are. This is just the cycle of news, You've got to do your interviews, and somebody's then got to rewrite them with a headline on them. So you've got to pick something out of it.
That's true. If you would like to join us, 0390163666 or Demonland31 on the Skype, we'll take your call. Love hearing from fellow Demonlanders. Injury list. Before we go to the injury list, another injury. Well, it's not another one. Poor Corey Maynard, season-ending hip surgery. That's the second year in a row he's had. He's been out, with injuries. So got a feel for the guy. This was the year to sort of, try and break into the team, and unfortunately, injuries kept him out of that. So,
rotten luck. Absolutely,
absolutely rotten luck. In other injury news, still fairly healthy. Well, with the exception of Lever being out for the season now, sort of got pretty much a full list. Excuse me, full list available. Oscar McDonald has been cleared of the concussion that he got in the Queen's birthday game, and both Aaron Vandenberg and Pat McKenna graced the training track just the other day. So good to see them back. It'll still be a number of weeks before either of them will be.
Fingers crossed for Vanders.
Yeah, well, we've said this on this show that it's last roll of the dice with him, not in terms of ability, but in terms of injuries, because you'd think if he cops another injury, that's it for him. I always love Vanders playing. I was a fan, so hopefully you can get his fitness back up and playing in the resis and making a tilt. As we make our tilt towards the finals. Speaking of finals, if we want a good chance of making it, this is the perfect opportunity. It's one of those famous 8-point games this week. A win, keeps us solidly in that top 4 hunt, puts Port a bit behind us, but a loss brings us back to the pack.
And all those teams below us have all got relatively easy games on the weekend. So
a lot of those teams have easy draws going into the end of the season. So and we don't. So every game is a must-win game for us. We've got a bit of an easier patch sort of coming up, but after that, it's tough. One tough game after the next. But I've always said if you want to make finals, you want to beat teams in finals, you got to beat these teams. So you've got to take it.
And there's always upsets along the way. So we just got to hope that we're not the victims of one of those upsets.
Yeah.
But, your St Kildas and your Carltons and your Brisbanes, they'll knock off the odd team here or there, and there's a long way to go yet.
It is. Changes for this week. You think we'll make any changes? I don't think don't have any forced changes. But what do you see?
This is where we need to play Simon Says, perhaps. And we all, say what we think Simon says at the selection table. It's hard to know, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think. You go.
No, well, we didn't get to talk about the Queen's birthday game, and as I said last week, I think we'll just forget about that.
Yep.
We had a couple of a few players just not performing, but I don't know.
Yep.
Look, it's hard to say whether do they drop. Yeah, I felt Pedersen didn't have a great game. This was a game to sort of stamp himself. Does he stay in? Do we go back to the Wiedemann table? Do we,
Yeah,
what do we do?
I think Pedersen should go out and one of Wiedemann and Smith come in. I'm tempted to go with the Weed, but, Smith was going okay. I think that's likely. One of those two coming in for Petters. And then you got the possibility of Tyson coming back, and Jeffy Garlett is another potential in. And then you have the possibilities of, Petty and Sam Frost coming into the back line. So who knows what good he's going to do.
Did
he mention Petty in his press conference?
He did have a presser the other day. I can't remember whether he mentioned him. We know that Petty was named in the extended bench for the Queen's birthday. Didn't get the gig, and Joel Smith got the gig. I was happy with Joel Smith's game. I felt a bit sorry for him towards the end when he had to play on that Man Mountain Cox. Bit of a funny matchup, but we couldn't really do anything about that at the time. There was a thread that I was going to bring up last week, but after the Rosie interview, we didn't have anyone available to discuss with me. But Petracca, there was a thread about Petracca that he's in a bit of a rut. What would you do with Petracca? We all know he's a very talented guy. And I just don't. He probably hasn't been performing, and he probably agrees to the level that he'd want to. Would we even consider dropping someone with talent like that to the Reds?
Nope, no way. No. It's not like he's been terrible.
No,
he's just hasn't been brilliant.
That's right.
So, and fair cop. He's only played it's 50 now or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no.
I think I'd agree with that.
He was in really good form at the start of the year. It's tapered off after the dog bite, but that happens with young kids.
It does. Just going by reading stuff on the boards, and in particular in the thread about the changes. Every week we get people, and it's always half and half. People about Vince and Lewis, whether you can have both of them in the same team.
For the moment, yep. Don't have any qualms with that.
No. Well, if there's nothing else, anything else on the boards
there is one slight matter of Demonland Forum housekeeping.
Yes.
Don't report posts with grammar suggestions, such as this post needs a question mark at the end of it, because that's not what the reporting system's for.
I don't recall seeing any of those. Did I miss something?
It was actually a thread that you've created that was reported, so it was one of your posts.
Oh, okay.
It's been,
what
you're the one that could be penalised.
Someone
yes.
reported me for bad grammar.
Someone reported you. Yes, that's also not a wise thing to do to the administrators.
I don't rule with an iron fist like that.
Do you want your grammar questioned?
Well, I'd be the first one to admit that my grammar at times isn't great. Spelling sometimes gets me, but I always blame bad spelling on autocorrect. That's my default these days. So that's an easy out for anyone. The report feature is if we're talking housekeeping of Demonland at the moment, please use the report feature if you do see something you don't like, rather than PMing the admin. First of all, when you do report a thing, we get a link to the actual thread you're talking about. We've had a number of times where people have personally messaged us mentioning a post but not telling us where it is, so it's almost impossible to find. So please use the report feature. Any other housekeeping
No.
you want to bring up?
No, that ought to cover it.
All right, so we'll be back next week. I will. I've announced it on the site, but next week we'll be interviewing Aaron Davey exclusively on the Demonland podcast. Very excited about that because I loved watching Aaron Davey play.
Me too.
Do you remember, like, when he came onto the scene, just how explosive he was? He was chasing guys down. I'd never seen anything like it. Was running from, his defensive pressure was just amazing all over the ground. He was
really exciting for, the vast majority of his career. And he had silky skills and he could do brilliant things. And as you say, he completely changed the game, brought in this element of defensive pressure that we hadn't seen before, but kicked some absolutely silky goals along the way and did some beautiful stuff. So can't wait to talk to him.
Yeah,
also one of my heroes along the journey. So
yeah, so
very exciting.
Do yourself a favour. You've probably seen all the highlights of his, but go onto YouTube and just watch some. There's two things I love. There's one where he chases down Hawthorn player, I think it was Chance Bateman. He just came out of nowhere and tackled him. And not only did he tackle him, but the ball was dispossessed and he picked it up with silky skills, kicked it on his left foot and hit a target. And that was sensational. And there's also somewhere online, there's on YouTube, a brilliant goal that he kicked
against Geelong.
I can't remember who it was against, but it was just fantastic. So do yourself a favour.
Is that the one where he's tucked up in the member's pocket?
Yeah, I think so.
It's in the wet and he goes back and forward and he's dodging and weaving and then he's got nowhere left to go and he just kicks a goal and it goes right through from the boundary line. It's beautiful.
There's that one. There's also, I think, one against Freo as well. That's sensational. So, yeah, that's something to look forward to next week, Aaron Davey on the Demonland podcast. So, I guess with that, we'll play...
one bit of breaking news.
We can turn the music
Apparently, the state opposition leader, who is Matthew Guy, today said that Melbourne, you're talking about, had more chance of winning a premiership than getting our project up.
Well, if we win a premiership, then I'm happy not to get the project up. So,
having said that, he's not in power at the moment, and if news poll is to be believed, he won't be in power at the next state election either. So, perhaps his opinion doesn't matter here.
Do we know who he supports?
He's definitely not Melbourne.
Well, you would think so after a comment like that.
Definitely not Melbourne.
Well, I'll as I said, I'll take the premiership. So if anyone's handing out premierships, I'll take one of those. Thank you, Grapeviney, for joining me this week. Thank you to Brad Green. That was a great interview. Love Brad. Great footballer and If you want to follow Demonland, you can go to our website, demonland.com. You can follow us on Facebook, look up Demonland. Follow us on Twitter, @Demonland. Follow us on Instagram, @Demonland31. On Demonland, you can listen to all the interviews that we've done over the journey. Couple of rippers. You've got to listen to the Paul Roos interview if you haven't already. Do yourself a favour, chase that one up. You can listen to it on SoundCloud or just subscribe to us on iTunes or on YouTube. My name is Andy. Go Demons.